In the heart of London stands a house so haunted that even police refuse to step inside. They say anyone who sleeps in its attic never wakes up the same again. This is the story of 50 Berkeley Square, where screams still echo through the walls long after death. Story 1. There is a house in Mayfair, London, that locals still whisper about when the fog rolls in and the gas lamps flicker weakly in the cold night air. Its address is simple, 50 Berkeley Square, but its reputation is anything but. For over 2 centuries, this elegant Georgian townhouse has been called the most haunted house in London. From the outside, it looks like any other stately London residence. Clean brick facade, tall sash windows, polished black door. Yet behind those walls, legends of death, madness, and unspeakable terror have been born. Stories so chilling that even today, no one willingly stays the night in its attic. The house was built in the late 1700s, when Berkeley Square was home to London's wealthy elite. Gentlemen rode carriages down its cobblestone streets, and servants hurried between houses. But even in its earliest days, neighbors began to whisper that something wasn't right at number 50. Strange noises were heard after midnight, slow, deliberate footsteps pacing up and down the upper floor. Sometimes a shadow would flicker past a window when everyone inside was supposed to be asleep. Servants reported cold drafts that would come and go like invisible hands brushing against their necks. By the mid-1800s, the stories had multiplied. It was said that one of the earliest residents, a young woman trapped in a cruel and controlling marriage, had flung herself from the attic window to her death. Her ghost, they said, remained there, drifting through the attic rooms, crying softly when the moonlight fell through the broken glass. Some called her the brown mist, others the pale woman in white. But whatever she was, the terror she brought was real enough to drive men insane. In 1870, a reclusive old man named Mr. Myers moved into the house. Once a polite and charming gentleman, Myers had suffered heartbreak when the woman he loved abandoned him just before their wedding. Heartbroken, he withdrew from society, retreating into the upper floors of the townhouse. Servants said he never left the attic. He would wander the house at night, muttering to himself, leaving letters written to no one. Some said he'd lost his mind. Others said the woman in white had taken it from him. When Myers finally died, the house fell into silence, but not peace. For a while, the property stood empty. Landlords tried to rent it out, but each tenant left within weeks, describing strange happenings they refused to talk about. Once, a maid fled screaming into the street at dawn, claiming that something had been sitting at the edge of her bed, breathing heavily in the dark. Another servant swore she saw a woman's hand reach out of the attic door and then vanish when she screamed. And one night, a passing constable saw a flickering light moving inside the empty house long after midnight, slowly climbing the staircase, room to room, until it reached the attic window and disappeared. Then came the sailors. One foggy night in 1887, 2 sailors from HMS Penelope, Edward Blunden and Robert Martin, arrived in London looking for a cheap place to stay. Every boarding house was full, and eventually they stumbled upon 50 Berkeley Square. The lower rooms were vacant, the landlord gone, but they found the door unlocked. They decided to spend the night there. Martin joked about the ghost stories. Blunden didn't laugh. As darkness fell, the great house settled into an eerie silence. Every creak and sigh of the floorboards seemed louder in the emptiness. They built a small fire in the fireplace of a dusty drawing room and tried to sleep. But near midnight, Blunden heard something. A slow scraping sound from above. The unmistakable drag of a chair across the floorboards. Then footsteps. He nudged Martin awake. The steps grew louder, descending from the attic one by one, as if someone, or something, was walking down the stairs. Martin grabbed a candle and opened the door to the hall. "Who's there?" he shouted. No answer. Only the sound of breathing, heavy, labored, almost animal. Suddenly, a door upstairs slammed. The footsteps began again, running this time. They heard the crash of glass, the groan of old timber. Then, silence. Martin wanted to leave. Blunden insisted on checking the attic. He took the candle and climbed the staircase. The flame flickered wildly as he reached the top landing. The attic door was half open. Inside, darkness pressed against the walls like something alive. The air was icy, wet with rot. He stepped inside, calling out for Martin, but then froze. There, in the corner of the room, was a shape. Small at first. Then it moved. A shrouded figure, hunched, crawling along the floor toward him. The candlelight caught something pale, a face, twisted and hollow-eyed. Blunden screamed. Downstairs, Martin heard the scream echo through the house. He bolted up the stairs but saw only the candle rolling on the floor and the door slamming shut. He threw his shoulder against it, but it wouldn't budge. Something was holding it from the other side. Then came the sound of choking. Blunden gasping, clawing at something unseen. The door flew open and a foul wind rushed out, snuffing the candle. Martin ran into the room, but Blunden was gone. They say Martin fled into the street half mad, babbling about a thing with no face. When the police searched the house the next morning, they found Blunden's body twisted at the bottom of the staircase. His eyes were wide open, his mouth frozen in a silent scream. The coroner said his neck had been broken, as if by great force. But no one could explain what had caused it. There were no signs of an intruder. After that, the legend grew darker. Some said the ghost in the attic could change its form, appearing as a mist, a shadow, or even a monstrous half-human creature. One visitor in the 1890s claimed he had spent only a few minutes inside before a wave of suffocating dread forced him out. "It was like something was breathing inside my skull," he said. Another claimed he saw the curtains in the upper window move, though the house was locked and empty. By the early 1900s, the stories became so notorious that newspapers called 50 Berkeley Square the house that kills. Neighbors avoided walking past it at night. Even the city's night watchmen crossed the street when they reached the square. For years, the building stood mostly unoccupied. Some claimed the ghosts of all who died there now shared the same walls, each trapped in an endless loop of their final terror. During World War II, a bomb exploded nearby, shattering the attic windows but leaving the house strangely intact. Workers who entered afterwards said the upper floor smelled of death and decay, though no bodies were found. And yet, in the broken glass of the attic, they swore they saw a faint outline of a woman's face, watching them. Today, 50 Berkeley Square still stands. It's been restored, its brickwork cleaned, its windows bright. But even now, employees in nearby offices whisper of lights that flicker at odd hours, of curtains moving when no one's inside, of faint sobbing that drifts through the night. Some nights, a passerby might glance up and see a dim shape in the attic window. A woman in white, or perhaps something darker, just watching. What exactly haunts that attic remains a mystery. Was it the ghost of a broken-hearted woman, doomed to relive her despair? Or something older, something drawn to grief itself? Each story blurs into another until the house becomes less a building and more a wound in the city's memory. People still cross the square quickly after sundown. The air seems colder there, the shadows deeper. And if you listen closely, sometimes you can still hear the sound of footsteps pacing above, back and forth, waiting for someone foolish enough to climb those stairs again. Story 2. The mansion stands alone on Sweetwater Avenue, its towering columns and weathered bricks casting shadows even in daylight. Built in 1835, it was meant to be a symbol of prestige, a grand southern home overlooking Florence, Alabama. But behind those iron gates and moss-draped oaks, Sweetwater Mansion has never known peace. It breathes, it listens, and sometimes it answers. They say the walls remember. Every footstep, every whisper, every scream that ever echoed here. All of it still lives within the house. The people who have stepped inside will tell you it feels wrong from the very first breath. The air grows thicker, heavier, as if something unseen is watching. Locals say that when you cross its threshold, you don't just enter a house, you enter its memory. Sweetwater was built by General John Brahan for his son-in-law, Robert Patton, a man destined to become Alabama's governor. The mansion saw parties, soldiers, and family gatherings. But as time passed, joy turned to tragedy. War took lives, disease took more, and something else, something far older than the Pattons, took the rest. The first sign came during the Civil War. Soldiers quartered inside began hearing footsteps upstairs when no one was there. Furniture moved at night. A candle in the hallway burned blue. And one young soldier swore he saw a man in Confederate uniform standing at the window. The same man whose body they had buried days earlier. After the war, Sweetwater stood silent for decades. The Patton family had scattered, but locals said lights still flickered at night. People passing by heard piano music drifting from the empty halls. When curious teenagers broke in during the 1920s, they found the piano lid open. A single note pressed down, vibrating softly on its own. Years later, in the 1960s, a historian named Margaret Tanner bought the mansion, hoping to restore it. She believed the stories were just local folklore until the night she spent there alone. She later wrote in her diary that she woke at 3:15 a.m. to the sound of footsteps pacing above her. Then came a dragging sound, slow and deliberate, as if something heavy was being pulled across the floor. When she went upstairs, the hallway was freezing cold. On the wall, she saw handprints smeared in dust, too small to be adult hands, too high to be a child's. Neighbors said Margaret changed after that night. She spoke to herself, sometimes stood outside staring at the upper windows, whispering that they don't rest. She refused to sleep in the mansion again. But it wasn't just footsteps or whispers anymore. Visitors reported seeing a woman in a flowing white dress standing in the mirror of the main hall. When approached, she would fade like smoke, leaving behind a scent of gardenias. Others described seeing a man in a military coat walking through the corridor, holding a letter soaked in blood. He never looked at them, just walked, endlessly, aimlessly, as if reliving his final moment over and over again. One of the mansion's darkest legends speaks of the hidden room beneath the parlor. It was discovered accidentally in the 1980s during a renovation. Workers found a sealed door behind a layer of plaster. Inside was a small space with no windows, lined with brick and faint traces of iron chains bolted to the wall. On the floor was a wooden crib, rotted with time. Nobody knows what it was for. Some say it was a slave confinement chamber. Others believe it was built to hide a child, one who never made it out. After that discovery, construction workers began quitting one after another. One man claimed he saw a child crawling in the corner, its skin gray, eyes completely black. Another said his tools kept vanishing, only to reappear neatly arranged on the steps, as if someone was watching him work. One worker fell from the staircase and broke his neck. Witnesses swore they saw him pushed by invisible hands. In modern times, Sweetwater Mansion has been featured on multiple paranormal investigation shows. Teams brought in EMF detectors, thermal cameras, and EVP recorders. What they captured defied logic. Disembodied voices calling their names. Sudden cold spots that dropped the temperature by 30 degrees. One recording captured a faint whisper that said, "Get out of my house." Another caught a deeper voice, one that murmured, "He never left." Perhaps the most chilling incident occurred in 2006. A photographer was documenting the mansion for a magazine spread. He set up his camera in the parlor, facing the grand staircase. As he adjusted the lens, he noticed movement, a figure descending slowly from the top steps. The figure was translucent, wearing what looked like an old Confederate uniform. The photographer froze. When he blinked, it was gone. But in his final photo, a faint shadow remained. A man-shaped silhouette halfway down the stairs, with eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. Locals believe the mansion's curse began the day Robert Patton's son died. He was said to have been buried in one of the rooms before the funeral. The coffin was laid in the parlor, and the body remained inside the house for several days. Since then, every owner who tried to renovate the parlor has faced tragedy. Sudden illness, financial ruin, or in one case, death. One psychic claimed that the child's spirit never left the room. She said she saw him standing by the window, staring out, waiting for someone who never came back. In 2010, a group of paranormal investigators spent a night there. They set up cameras in every hallway and motion sensors throughout the rooms. At 2:47 a.m., every sensor on the second floor went off simultaneously. When the team rushed upstairs, they found every door open, even ones they had locked. On one bed lay a single white rose, freshly cut, dripping with dew. The rose wasn't there before. The team left before sunrise and refused to ever return. But the strangest stories come not from ghost hunters, but from locals who live nearby. Some nights, they see lights flickering inside the mansion when no one is there. Others hear faint music, the same piano that hasn't worked for decades. And once in a while, someone walking past swears they see a figure in the upstairs window staring down at them. A woman in white, motionless, unblinking, waiting. There's one more thing that chills every visitor. In the main hallway hangs a large mirror that has been part of the house since the 1800s. Many people who've looked into it claim they see their reflection standing slightly out of sync, blinking a moment later, turning its head when they don't. One visitor fainted after seeing someone standing behind her in the reflection, though she was alone. To this day, Sweetwater Mansion remains one of the most haunted places in Alabama. People come to explore, to film, to feel something unexplainable. Some leave laughing, thinking it's all just stories. Others leave shaken, pale, and silent, never willing to talk about what they saw. Because in Sweetwater, something ancient lingers, something that doesn't want to be forgotten. And every night, as darkness spreads across Florence, the mansion watches. The windows glow faintly, as if lit from within. The halls creak, the piano sighs. And if you listen closely, you might still hear footsteps pacing in the dark, waiting for the next soul foolish enough to come inside.